We all use fossil fuels in our everyday life, but experts say they will deplete in the next 50 to 100 years. This will throw us back into the Stone Age. Scientists are now desperately looking for an effective solution. Solar or wind energy is not expected to be sufficient to run the planet. Nuclear energy produces excess radioactive wastes. Now some scientists are taking a closer look at the moon and see a shiny new opportunity. Back in 1945, at the Potsdam Conference, Joseph Stalin made a startling proposal to divide the moon. And this was long before the first steps were taken in space exploration. But it was not taken seriously then. More than 60 years on, the idea is finally taking shape.
It is helium-3 that experts view as a perfect substitute. This non-radioactive substance is rare on Earth, but is plentiful in the lunar soil. Just 20 tons of it could provide the annual energy demand for the United States. In monetary terms, it is worth $4 billion per ton. But the question is, how can it be done?
Helium-3 could be directly converted into energy through a thermonuclear reaction with no radioactive waste. Solar winds have deposited millions of tons of this element onto the moon's surface, which could provide energy for thousands of years. But apart from the sheer difficulty of getting to the moon, there are other problems with the project.
We don't have any thermonuclear reactors capable of processing helium-3. We also have to create a major transport system to get various equipment to the moon.
The Neil-1 sub has successfully completed its mission at the North Pole. It did achieve the seabed at the point of the geographic North Pole at the depth of some 4,300 meters. It did install there the Russian spec fragment as titanium, and it could actually perform part of its scientific program. It spent about an hour and a half down there at the seabed, and then it successfully surfaced, and the crew is back home safely on board the scientific vessel Academic Federate. For example, the Mir-2 was quite a difficult task finding their way out. They have emerged at least 3 times to the surface, but in the wrong places, in the areas either covered with ice or in the small areas free of ice, but accessible for the rescue team on the motorboat. Obviously, they had some problem. They had some minor collisions with the ice blocks and with the ship, Academic Federate, and we saw quite a broad strip of oil on the water as they were losing oil, as a matter of fact.
It's a country with one of the worst performing economies in the world. It has an annual inflation rate racing towards 5,000% with terrifying rapidity. And the cost of living has spun so far out of control that the same amount needed to buy a banana today would have bought you a house 5 years ago. The country is Zimbabwe, once one of the richest in Africa. Things are now so bad that the UN's World Food Programme says some 3.3 million Zimbabweans face famine in the coming months. It has appealed to international donors for $118 million in emergency aid. The grim reality of life in President Robert Mugabe's Zimbabwe is that unemployment has reached 80%, power cuts are an everyday occurrence, and shop shelves are bare of even the most basic of goods. Zimbabweans are fleeing the country at a rate of 3,000 a day, mostly to South Africa. President Mugabe's solution to print more money and artificially freeze prices has merely exacerbated the problem, with some now predicting that inflation will have soared to 100,000% by the end of the year. How much longer can Mugabe cling on to power?
Hi, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington, and welcome to First Look. Today, most of the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric will be coming to you from Minneapolis, the site of that devastating bridge collapse yesterday. Katie Couric and a team of CBS correspondents are there, and they'll be bringing you all the latest from the rescue efforts, recovery efforts, and the NTSB investigation. Here in Washington, we're taking a look at the nation's aging infrastructure, not just bridges, but everything from our steam pipes to our airports. It's in disrepair for the large part because it's gone underfunded for years. 150,000 of the nation's bridges, for example, have been deemed structurally deficient or obsolete. That means they are desperately in need of repair, and to fix them, well, that would cost billions of dollars.
This is in Pennan. Told to leave their homes, a mud slide crept through the village. Extraordinary images there from Hampshire. Apparently, evacuees have taken refuge in a local pub, but now have been forced to move elsewhere as the problems continued. The torrential rain there has caused these mudslides to sweep right the way through Pennan. And apparently, in addition to the landslide risk, water and sewage problems have made things worse. Grampian police restricting access to this village, public being asked to avoid this area. It's a former fishing village consisting of a small harbour which you can spot the wall of there, and a single row of houses below a set of cliffs, and became a popular tourist attraction. You might remember the 1983 film Local Hero. Well, it looked a bit better in that film than it does now.
It's a meeting between the embattled Iraqi Prime Minister and a newly elected Turkish government to avoid yet another crisis in Iraq. Top of the agenda, these PKK fighters in the mountains along the Turkish-Iraqi border.
We've agreed to join hands to find deterrent measures to terrorist acts in Iraq, including the PKK. Efforts will be channeled to bring this to an end and disarm the PKK as a step towards forcing them out of Iraqi soil.
Turkey has carried out a continuous small-scale shelling campaign against PKK positions inside Iraq. However, over the past months, it has been warning of a large-scale incursion, sending thousands of troops to its southern border. Despite Turkey's threats, people here don't believe an attack will actually happen. But should it happen, there is no doubt in their minds as to who they will be backing. Turkey's economic ties are enormous here. The market is flooded with goods made in Turkey to the benefit of both sides. Still, Ankara is perceived by many as an oppressive regime which denies millions of fellow Kurds their rights.
Moscow says it'll fully cooperate in an investigation into who was responsible for launching a missile into neighbouring Georgia. Russia denies one of its planes was to blame, but Georgia has asked the United Nations Security Council to discuss the issue. Russia's foreign ministry says the incident is an attempt to derail improving relations between the two countries. Our correspondent William Dunbar now reports from the Georgian capital, Tbilisi.
The missile that landed in the Georgian village of Titelubani on Monday evening may have failed to detonate, but the incident has already exploded into a fresh diplomatic crisis between Russia and Georgia. Georgia claims the missile was fired by Russia in an unprovoked act of aggression and targeted a radar station close to Georgia's breakaway Republic of South Ossetia. Russia strenuously denies these allegations, condemning the incident as a provocation.
Moscow is extremely concerned about the incident and regards it as an attempt to upset the improving Russian-Georgian relations, as well as to exacerbate the situation in the settlement of the Georgian-Ossetian conflict. The position of the Russian side has been stated. We are not inclined to engage in excessive public rhetoric and anticipate the outcome of the investigation. We insist that it be carried out promptly and effectively. We are ready to cooperate in these issues.
Former Zambian President Frederick Chiluba has appeared in court facing charges of corruption and embezzlement.
In May, Chiluba was found guilty of stealing over $40 million of Zambian funds by a court in London.
Now he's back on home soil, and despite his ill health, his trial is due to get underway later this week. Yvonne Ndege reports from Lusaka.
Dr. Chiluba, Yvonne Ndege from Al Jazeera. How will you be pleading today? Dr. Chiluba, how will you be pleading today?
The former president of Zambia arrives in court. He's accused of stealing tens of millions of dollars of public money for private use. If convicted, He'll be the first African leader to go to jail at the hands of his own. No chance, say the dozens of supporters who showed up outside court. He, like them, pleads not guilty. This man is trying to secure a conviction against the former president. He's already recovered 30 apartments in Belgium and several pairs of the president's shoes, all allegedly illegally gained. Luxury cars accompanied the fine clothing and jewellery.
The Zambian government believed that public money was spent on purchases like this, with money from an account held in London, of which it's alleged President Chiluba was well aware of.
Dean hit the Mexican coast at 3:30 in the morning, swollen by the warm, deep waters of the Caribbean. The eye of the storm passed over the port town of Mahahual, bringing sustained winds of 165 miles an hour and torrential rain to the Yucatan Peninsula. The worst of the weather missed the major tourist hub of Cancun, but even there reporters struggled to find their feet. Few of those who decided to stay at the resort town ventured outside. The streets were empty, save for branches ripped from trees. This morning, shopping centres also remained deserted. The Mexican army was mobilized by President Felipe Calderón, who's cut short a visit to a trade summit in Canada to oversee the response. President Bush has offered him assistance.
I want you to know that U.S. agencies are in close touch with proper Mexican authorities, and if you so desire help, we stand ready to help.
As Dean reached the peninsula, it had grown to a Category 5. Only 3 of that size have made landfall in the U.S. since 1935. The last was Hurricane Andrew 15 years ago.
Gaza's main prison. Some 300 inmates are housed here, serving sentences for theft, murder, or accused of collaborating with Israel. Now inmates can shave off their sentences if they memorize chapters from the Koran. Memorizing a single chapter will be rewarded with a month early release. Learning 5 chapters of the religious text will get a prisoner a year knocked off their sentence. Prison governors say the program is intended to encourage better behavior in prisons, according to the Quran's law. A unique incentive which those detained here have welcomed. But the new incentive comes with a warning. Inmates have to have served 2/3 of their sentence to qualify for early release. After that, reading as much as possible can score them points.